Hello friends, welcome to the Easter special. In this episode, we're gonna make some hot cross buns. And not just any hot cross buns. This will be the sweetest, most fragrant, softest and stickiest hot cross buns you ever had. And I've simplified the recipe, so even a beginner could make these. Trust me, it's well worth it. I mean, who could resist these? So keep watching, see how they're made. And as always, you'll find a full detailed recipe down in the description box with metric and imperial units. And don't forget to click that subscribe button because I have many more videos like this. Now let's see what equipment we need. We'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, dough scraper, temperature probe and a brush. That's all we need. Now on to the ingredients. We'll need some strong white bread flour, milk, yeast, salt, sugar, some soft butter, mixed spice, currants, mixed peel, and some sugar and water to make the syrup for glazing. So let's begin. Get your bowl, add your milk, then in with the yeast, salt, sugar. Now give it all a good mix. You want to dissolve any large sugar or salt crystals and hydrate the yeast before adding the flour. And once you're happy with that, add the flour and mix it to a dough using your scraper. You want to mix it until there's no more dry flour and until it's one cohesive piece. And if the scraper's not doing the job, continue on by hand. But you want to do this in the bowl to avoid making a mess on your table. Now pop it on your table when you start kneading. This dough is not very sticky, so I'm going to use my regular kneading method. What I like to do is press down and forwards with the heel of my right hand, then using the fingers of my left hand I fold the piece of dough under the heel of my right hand, then turn and repeat. This dough will be quite tough to begin with, so pop a can of elbow grease, alright? But don't give up, knead it for around 3 minutes. Now what you want to do is grab your scales and cut off a 70-gram piece. This will be used to make the crosses on top. You can knead the small piece of dough a couple of times, shape it into a ball and put it aside. Now grab the larger dough, which will be our buns, spread it out and then add the soft butter and the mixed spice. Now this part is going to be messy to begin with, but don't worry about that. That's just how it is. You want delicious buns, you gotta make a mess. Now take the dough and fold it up to seal in those ingredients. So what you want to do now is press it against the table, pick it up, squish it, squeeze it, mash it up. There's no right or wrong here. All you're trying to do is force the butter into the dough. After a minute of squeezing, continue kneading it, just as you did before. And at this point you might think, now what the hell is this mess? But don't get discouraged, trust me, keep kneading it just as you did before, and the dough will start coming together. Or you can grab your dough scraper once in a while and scrape it all up. But you can already see it's coming together nicely, right? So just keep kneading it. And if you got some butter and mixed spice and dough stuck to your hands, pick up the larger dough piece and just collect it up from your hands. I mean, it goes without saying that your hands should be clean even before attempting this. Now continue kneading for around 5 minutes in total after you have the butter. And once it's become nice and smooth and not sticky at all, we can start fermenting it. Now shape your dough into a nice ball and get out the way. Clean down your table, place it into a bowl and take its temperature. You want it to be around 26 degrees Celsius. If it's warmer, it will ferment more rapidly. If it's cooler, it will take longer. Adjust the proofing times accordingly. Now the first proof will only be 20 minutes. You can call it resting. Because we haven't added all the ingredients yet to the dough. It will give the dough a chance to relax and the gluten to develop a little bit. So it's always better to add ingredients like these later on in the mix. And all you want to do is flatten your dough out until it's nice and big. Then sprinkle on your currants and mixed peel in a nice even layer. And then fold it up. Now one thing to note, I have not soaked the currants. Soaking the fruits is normally really necessary for dough that will be sliced afterwards. So if you have fruit that is a little bit dry, you might tear the dough as you try to slice it with a knife. I'm going to slice my buns with my teeth, so I don't have to worry about that. And besides, if you're not using grandma's raisins from back of the cupboard from 2 years ago, then they should be moist enough anyway. So once you fold the dough up, knead it a couple times. As soon as the fruit starts popping out the surface, stop. Now get it back into the bowl and now you can really start fermenting it. You want to cover it up and leave it for around 1 hour. And this is definitely a slow riser, but don't worry about that. That's just how it is. After the first hour, we're going to give it a fold. To perform a fold, place your dough out on the table upside down, then flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up again, and that's your fold done. And we're going to do the same with a smaller dough piece. Folding in this case will help us distribute the fruit evenly throughout the dough. It will also degas the dough and create extra layers and gluten structure. And it will equalize the temperature. Let's say your kitchen was cold and your dough cooled down a little bit on the surface. By folding, we are distributing that temperature evenly throughout the dough, thus giving us an even fermentation. So once you've folded both your dough balls, get them back in their bowls, cover them up and leave them to ferment for 1 more hour. And don't worry if it hasn't puffed up massively, that's just how it is. The dough is heavy because there's lots of fruit in it. Also, the large amount of sugar that we added slows down fermentation. But anyway, after the second proof, take your dough out of the bowl, weigh it and divide it into 12 equal pieces. And you should definitely use your scales for this, otherwise you end up with wonky balls. After dividing, we want to pre-shape them. Take a dough ball, flatten it out, and fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Then close up the seam at the bottom, and that's your dough ball done. You can tighten it against the table a little bit, but it doesn't have to be perfect at this point. And don't worry if the fruit starts popping out the surface, that's normal. Once you pre-shaped your buns, what you want to do is grab the smaller dough piece and divide it into 7 equal pieces. They should come to 10 grams each. And repeat the same steps that you took with the buns. You also want to shape these into balls. It's actually quite funny shaping such a tiny dough piece. And you know, I guess you could get your kids to do it. I know my sausage fingers are too big for this. So once you pre-shaped all your dough, cover it all up and we'll let it rest for 30 minutes. During this time the gluten will relax and make it easier for us to shape. And doing the final shaping for the buns is the same process. Grab a dough ball, place it upside down on your table, flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started. Then tighten it against the table, pinch the seam together, and that's your bun done. And hey, you got 11 more to practice on. Now place them all on a tray, lined with some non-stick paper. Make sure you leave some gaps between them. They will puff up and spread out as they are fermenting and baking later on. You can also flatten them down a little bit. Right, so now we can get on to shaping the crossing. Now traditionally you would make a paste with butter, flour, water and some other ingredients and then pipe it on with a piping bag. But I wanted to make the cross out of bread dough and it worked out quite well. Now roll them gradually. Apply even pressure. See how I'm spreading out my fingers to cover the whole length. Try to get them as even as you can. You want to roll them to around 30 centimeters, which is 1 foot long. And now, just lay them across the buns. And if they're too fat, just pick them up and stretch them a little bit. You can press them into the buns a little bit, and cut off any excess. Just grab your scraper and snap off the ends, and then tuck the loose dough underneath the buns to make it nice and neat. And now repeat 6 more times. I mean, it looks quite good, right? You can't argue with the fact that this is working. On one hand, you could say it takes more work because you're actually rolling it out instead of piping it on. But then on the other hand, we didn't have to make 2 things. We made 1 dough, just took a little piece off of it and used that for the crossing, right? Now don't skimp on the final proof. It'll take around 2 to 2.5 hours. And during the final hour, preheat your oven to 160 degrees Celsius with a fan on. They definitely take a while to rise, but that's fine. You bake when the bread is ready, not when you're ready. Now to really make the crosses set into the dough, what you can do is grab your scraper and push them in between the buns. This will prevent them from rising up separately. Now pop these in the oven, they'll take around 30 to 35 minutes. And if you are ever unsure of the doneness of your buns, stick a temperature probe in them. If they read higher than 94 degrees Celsius, which is 200 degrees Fahrenheit, then they're ready. Now as soon as these come out of the oven, or even before they come out of the oven, take a little pot, add the water and the sugar to make the syrup, and bring it over to the hob top and just bring it up to the boil. And while you're making the syrup, you can pick off any stray currants and mixed peel that's popped out to the dough, because it's most likely burnt. Now you might think that we're using quite a lot of syrup, but trust me, this is what makes the buns. Generously brush the hot syrup all over them. And look at that shine. It transforms them completely. And make sure you use up all of the syrup. But there you go. That's definitely the best hot cross bun I've ever made. Let me know if you try it out. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, drop them down in comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more awesome bread videos. And check out my channel if you want to learn more about the principles of baking. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.